Welcome everyone to this CLS Infra seminar for the Computational Literary Studies Infrastructure Project, and to our talk from our visiting CLS Infra Fellow, Dr. Maciej Maryl, who is on the second part of his visit to Galway. He was here earlier in the summer, where he gave us a wonderful introduction to his project on Polish literary bibliographies and computational approaches to studying reputations in Polish literature since 1989. Maciej has very generously offered to give another talk on the second part of his visit, related to another of his interests. And it's going to be about his involvement in the recent Allea report recognizing digital scholarly outputs in the humanities. So Maciej is, as I've said, visiting CLS Infra Fellow here. He's also an assistant professor and founding director of the Digital Humanities Center at the Institute of Literary Research of the Polish Academy of Sciences. He's involved in European research infrastructures for DH as a member of the OPERA's Executive Assembly, SSH Open Cluster Governing Board, and co-chair of DARIA Digital Methods and Practices Observatory Working Group. And his interests include data science applied to cultural data, innovation in scholarly communication, and meta-research on digital practices in the humanities. So you should be able to see, hopefully online, the title of Maciej's talk, which is Digital Humanities Outputs in the Light of Research Assessment Reform. Thank you very much for being here, Maciej, and we've enjoyed your visits during the summer and in this last 10 days. You're with us for another 2 or 3 days, enjoying basking in the glorious Galway sunshine, but you probably experienced all 4 seasons at this point. Very pleased to have had you here, today to talk us through your work on this project. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Justin. Thank you also, for you to come in and for having me here. It's like a really great pleasure to be here and to work in this great environment, and as you said, to experience all kinds of weather, and you never know which one you'll have the next day, which is also kind of thrilling. Okay, so I'm talking here today about the digital humanities outputs in the light of research assessment reform. But I would like to kind of start more or less with this, let's say, background of why I'm here, what I'm doing, and how it kind of relates to those bigger issues we're aiming to discuss. So I wanted to share this visualization with you. This is kind of Pac-Man visualization, Pac-Man model of actually literary awards and the Polish literature. So it's kind of, I mean, it makes sense that it's the notes represent awards and people getting them, and you see the cluster of people who getting more and some outliers who are getting just one award in the lifetime. However, if you zoom in, and this is what I've basically been doing for the past 10 days, working on this data here as well, you can just kind of uncover some relationships. So in this case, I wanted to show you, for instance, the early work of Olga Tokarczuk, the Nobel Prize winner, in the middle, and how is she connected through to other creators through, for instance, receiving the prizes, etc. What's her place? Another issue we can see is, like, for instance, this nice visualization of, basically, it's something we call ego network. So in the middle you have again Tokarczuk, and all those other notes are articles about her or works written by her, awards she got, etc. So by exploring this and the connections of those works with other authors, we can uncover some interesting things. But it's not the topic of this talk. It was more the topic of the previous one. But I wanted to start with this to stress some importance of the data behind it. So as you know, I'm working on like kind of mapping the literary system, and I have this data set with those different connections between persons, publishers, articles, books, locations, etc. And I can traverse it, we can map it, we can create a network of all the connections and analyze them, etc. But to do it all, we need data. And yeah, my background data is again Polish literary bibliography. It's old source, and I can actually see, you see it in the slide. It's kind of came through a long way from a paper edition towards like this first early 2000s database and the current data model, which is more robust, but it contains all this stuff. That brings us precisely to the topic of the talk. Because as I kind of quickly demonstrated you, Polish literary bibliography is a kind of resource that is useful and is a kind of scholarly output. It could be used by other scholars, like me in this case, to work on it. It's also connected to, for instance, European literary bibliography, like joint effort of different countries to create like this kind of common data source to look for books in different languages and countries, etc. So researchers basically see it as a scholarly output. However, whenever it comes to research assessment, like every 4 years in my country, we have this big, ministerial assessment procedure, which kind of values all the works done. And for this purpose, the assessment doesn't kind of recognize database as a proper resource. They kind of want us to produce books. In this case, what we need to do is to dump our database into PDFs, which are becoming kind of data monographs. And, because they are, of course, they are scholarly resource that, somebody's kind of overlooking the process. There's methodology, there's some kind of issue, there are methodological problems, etc. So everything is scholarly, but then the output as such cannot be recognized until it becomes a PDF. And then when it's PDF, it's better because you can see that there's somebody's an editor, somebody's a contributor, and everything is fine. Which is, as we can think of it, suboptimal to some extent. But something is changing now with those approaches, and most notably, there's COARA, so Coalition for Reforming Research Assessment, and actually, your university is a part of it as well. They signed this big agreement, and actually, I think COARA was also surprised by the number of institutions that widely joined the initiative. But basically, the initiative started kind of as a European Commission working group, moved toward basically changing the research assessment policies and approaches in Europe, basically. So the idea behind it is to broaden this recognition of diverse practices, activities, and careers in research. And of course, it's a bit much more, but the idea is to both cooperating on the top level, like European Commission or national like ministries, and kind of grassroots or bottom-up level, working with institutions like this university or academies or entities like that who wanted to change something in their policies. Similarly, when we look, for instance, for the recent position paper by Daria, Research Infrastructure for Digital Humanities and actually partner in the CLS and Infra project, they also kind of call for appropriate academic rewards for users and contributors to research infrastructure to recognize that what we do within infrastructure is also scholarly work. There was a recent position by Czech Association for Digital Humanities, just showing that lack of recognition of those outputs, it also making SSH more marginal. I mean, that we produce really important, interesting content that gets unnoticed because, there's this prevalence of printed or digitally printed, but like journals and monographs as a proper works. And finally, there's also like the ideas for the new ref. So nearby in the UK, that they also want to recognize this diversity of research output. So something is changing here. But the key obstacles, as we can see them and name them for these kind of innovative approaches, innovative work in the social sciences and humanities, I would see as follows. So first of all, this lack of recognition by current assessment systems. Secondly, lack of clear evaluation criteria for reviewers. So even if we get scholarly, a nice whatever scholarly output, like a database or digital scholarly edition, sometimes we don't have tools to say whether it's a good work or not. I mean, we can try as long as it looks like something we know from print, for instance, but sometimes we lack precise clear criteria to evaluate it. So that, of course, is corresponds with this issue of lack of competence and guidelines, how to actually perform this work, or although the new ones are still coming. And finally, the prestige economy. So I mean, this basically this idea that still, when the most value is kind of attached to publications in so-called prestigious journals, I mean, or whatever the impact factor fetish or things like that. So they're not the quality of the work per se, but the proxy of place where it's published. It's still difficult to kind of change this, this feedback loop whereby, I mean, even scholars engaging with innovation still kind of publish their work, sometimes also as another output, as a whatever journal article or something, which is more recognized because of the prestige, because, at the end of the day, they want to get hired, they want to get promotion, etc. So these are, I think, the problems we kind of working with. And these are precisely the areas we identified in one report prepared by Operas. Operas is this research infrastructure for scholarly communication in SSH, and it's launched the Innovation Lab. So I mean, the place where we're kind of looking at those new emerging outputs and observing the problems associated with them. When we asked scholars in interviews about like what they consider innovative in their work, they would call it, they would name, for instance, access. I mean, seamless access to outputs. That's innovation for them, that you can, easily access something. Then reaching new audiences. It's a kind of innovation that, you can go farther than just, whatever academic community, or you can go get, to other circles of this community. And finally, using new formats, so engaging with those innovative outputs. And as a follow-up to this work, we in the current project Operas Plus, we're kind of working on some case studies to provide some workflows for how to establish or how to engage with those innovative outputs. So there are like some ideas of how to kind of achieve that, and we're also publishing some articles about the innovation in this SSH. So if you're interested, you can visit the lab operas-eu.org and just to check our previous report and this work. However, the point is that we can work with the scholars, we can work with the research community to learn them, to learn from them, and then disseminate this knowledge how to work with those outputs. But still, the problem prevails of how to get it recognized. So, people will, usually they could tell us, okay, I would publish this data set, for instance, but, I need to put this time and effort in something else, which kind of brings me more recognition and is recognized by whatever supervisor or the committee as the output. So how to change this? So in order to achieve that, we kind of engaged with Allea Humanities working group. Allea is the All European Academies and this kind of European organization of the academies. And the Irish Academy is also a member. And actually the group was chaired by DRI director, Natalie Harwer, when I took over from her. But the idea was that, okay, we're engaging with researchers, now let's engage with this higher level. So let's try to speak with institutions to provide some ideas of what they can change in their practices to kind of enable what researchers kind of want to do on this bottom-up approach. And the group has a kind of track of record of this kind of work. So Actually, yeah, sorry, this slide just bumped. So this is our previous report from 2020 about sustainable and fair data sharing in the humanities. So this was kind of responding to this new trend of, there's, kind of research data everywhere, and the humanities institutions, humanities scholars kind of felt lost in, what is data? Is this data? Is what I'm doing is concerns data? If it's data, how should I proceed with this, etc., etc. So we tried to prepare some guidelines along those lines to kind of gather the existing knowledge and provide some ideas, but then we stopped in this moment that we said, okay, but in the end of the day, we also need recognition for this work, and this is what this new report addresses. So the new one, the idea was to yes, we don't see this before because of the Zoom, but I can just aim of the current report is to provide a reflective tool for researchers, institutions, and funders, policymakers to kind of engage with this idea of how to change some of our approaches to assessment, to what is actual output should be, point out key aspects of those innovative works, provide some guidelines for evaluation assessment, and collect existing materials, because of course we're not discovering the new land, and there's lots of material out there which we try to gather and present to the audience. And yeah, also what we did after preparing the draft of the report is important. We did the open consultation, and actually when I was there, I think it was when I was here in June, I think it was ongoing. We just started. It lasted for 2 months, and we basically opened the draft to everyone who was interested to look at it, comment, and we're actually surprised by the outcome, because we got altogether 28 readers, which left like 78 comments and 200 suggestions. But it kind of helped us on one hand improve and add some resources we were not aware of, but also we felt that it's kind of validated also by the community, in the sense that that what we presented was also kind of criticized, or there was like some requests for clarification, etc. But we felt that it's in this process we kind of get more in touch with the community of practice. So the main, let's say, the key argument of the report is that basically we need to accommodate somehow the key aspects of digital work in the humanities, which is, first of all, interdisciplinarity. So, applying tools and methods from ECT, but also from the information technologies, but also like social sciences and other disciplines and industries. So it's like inherently interdisciplinary. Secondly, the digital research practices concerning the works and different kinds of work, like whatever data creation, code writing, etc., should be recognized as valid work. And finally, the outputs that go beyond traditional genres should also be recognized. So we identify 5 key cross-cutting issues, which I'm going to dwell a little bit upon, which are, first of all, linking studies with underlying data, open-ended outputs, collaboration and authorship, training and competence building, and reviewing and evaluating. So these are like kind of those fields we think that all or many of the outputs kind of have in common in this sense, and we try to address those issues at bulk. So first of all, linking studies with underlying data. So this is this issue of basically, first of all, kind of extended publications, about which I'll be saying a bit about later on. But basically the idea that many current digital publications basically are not just textual, right? They're clearly either linking or using actively some sort of data or visualizations. Or here's the example of Journal of Digital History that gives you a really interesting one. It gives you different modes of reading. So you can read the narrative, the article, and see the graph, but you can engage with the data behind it, or you can engage with the code. You can see how it's built, and you can actually also download data and work with them on your So we provide some ideas of what's basically important for such work to be also kind of assessed. But what's the best practice here? So like providing clear licensing information, so reuse is possible. Creating links, not just citations. So basically ensuring that if you want to get somewhere to the source material, you have the possibility to do that. You use formats that facilitate data link. So I mean, so HTML being better than just closed PDF. And finally, also using data management plan, which is going to be a part of the larger project or just the publication, would be also an important issue that we don't think so much about this, but about how we should, when writing this kind of whatever source content, that we should follow certain steps and think about certain procedures early on, because that kind of could jeopardize the output, or in the end we have to get back to clear some issues that could be dealt with earlier. So this is first kind of bunch of issues we have. The second one, again, it's something pretty obvious, but still needing some discussion or thinking about, is open, the open-ended outputs and basically the update in scholarly work. And again, in the world of print, we are kind of also used to updates. There were like supplements to encyclopedias or whatever. So that was kind of common thing in a way. However, let's say contemporary, especially project-based work and funding, demands to do something new. That's like, when you're engaging or updating something, it's it's not so great. It's not so well seen. And however, sometimes it's better to update the existing thing than to create the new one. It may concern certain whatever publications, especially data sets, for instance, but also some, as mentioned, encyclopedic publication. This case study here is the Opera's Living Book. So this is basically let's say the place where operas kind of collect some reports about certain issues of their operations, for instance, like about tools for scholarly communication, and they are getting updated, and the new version is coming, but the previous one is still available for whatever reason, if we need to get back to it, and also we don't have to rewrite the report every time we're doing this. So again, our approach here is that we need to open to projects focused on continuation and improvement, and to consider both, technical and intellectual sustainability of output. So for instance, if our output is a digital whatever project database edition, so on one hand we have to think, how to make it, available throughout the years. So this software behind it, or maybe it's based on the, a research infrastructure, which kind of takes care of this technical maintenance. But there's also this intellectual sustainability, meaning that, if you want to update it, who decides it can be updated? And if there's a new resource to be added, who decides it could be added or not? So you need to have like this kind of, scientific board, or basically like in a journal, like a group or a person who kind of decides about this. But, it's a kind of issue that should be somehow regulated or thought about when creating the outputs that could be updated. Collaboration and authorship, another important fact. And again, it's also, as throughout all those issues, there's this kind of mix of the old and the new. But if we reflect on the practices in the humanities, we also see that, collaboration is also at heart of our work, but of course, which is usually imagined in this kind of lonely scholar with a book and presenting individual output approach. But all the output we do is largely collaborative, especially when it comes to the sources, for instance, collecting sources, building bibliographies, or like lexicons, or other different kinds of work we do. And especially it's more important now with the digital humanities outputs, where this input from others is more robust, more specific, could be. But at the end of the day, if it's, for instance, an article, we have I mean, we can have more authors, but it doesn't tell you the whole story, because, it could be author who gives the idea, but what about people who, I don't know, contribute by providing some data, cleaning data, or writing some code which is needed to execute something. And all those issues are difficult kind of to grasp, because at the end of the day, we kind of can end up with, movie-like credits after the paper or the project, but actually it's probably a good way to go in a way, because it's like it shows you clearly. It's not like it's the third author, and what does it mean? It's the third author. No, it shows you that, for instance, this person contributed this and that. So it's maybe it's more complicated later for processing, but it's this kind of approach to clearly identify who did what. And this link leads you to the contributor roles taxonomy credit, which provides those 14 typical contributor roles with description, so you can use it. Also, if you use, for instance, repositories like Zenodo, if you upload content, you can also kind of specify who done what. And other things to be mentioned here, of course, is the use of identifiers. So we can actually clearly link contributors to the outputs. So it's, I mean, ORCID ID is one of the most, I think, widespread, commonly used in academia. And also finally, the reviewers of the work should have kind of expertise, or at least the idea of those how those different roles kind of contribute to the output. That you have somebody who can actually recognize what kind of work has to be done, and maybe say, okay, it was not a big work, or maybe it was like a huge amount of work, like for instance in this whatever coding phase or something like this. So all those aspects should be somehow taken into consideration. Finally, and this also kind of overlaps with what I was presenting earlier, the training and competence building. So we highlight the need for interdisciplinary education, methodological training, but this idea behind it that reviewers need to possess sufficient competencies to evaluate such output. And sometimes it's not easy, because sometimes you have a competence in the domain, but not so much whatever in this digital realm. So in this case, it would be good to have teams in which the reviewers kind of can have different competencies and then agree upon the final whatever evaluation result for such output. Which leads us basically to the last cross-cutting issue, which is the idea that review should kind of focus on this kind of overall outcome. So it's not like nowadays, I mean, if I'm looking at how we discuss digital projects, we still tend to lean towards this kind of content-based approach that, we just kind of value what was written, not so much the overall effect of the project. So we just kind of still tend to think about the projects as just a new like interesting way of presenting the linear text in a way, which is not the case in many cases. I will discuss briefly in a second. But so this is this need of kind of recognizing that this is like something worth exploring as a whole. Also, the idea of what's important and what was kind of really stressed in the interviews we conducted, that sometimes scholars also are not keen to cite the innovative sources. So sometimes it's like, that you cite the website. It's still not always treated as a valid resource, or it could be changed. So it's always better to, I mean, it seems to be, or the consensus would be that it was better to cite whatever the journal article that stems from whatever this database project is, this innovative thing, which is kind of harming this actual position of the actual innovative sources, because they don't get many citations, sometimes you don't see how widely used or consulted they are, but rather they're basically, instead of crediting this, the other, let's say the more traditional version of the output is credited. So to finalize this chapter, I think that this last point here is crucial, that we basically probably for each kind of output, we definitely need to have clear criteria of how to deal with them. What we propose in this report are just some ideas or links to work done in this field. But also, if you're interested in general in this idea of evaluating interdisciplinary work, the Shape ID toolkit, the project, the Shape ID project on shaping interdisciplinary practices in Europe, which was actually led by Trinity College Dublin, created an innovative output. Is one thing, but the toolkits for research evaluation, so containing lots of resources on that issue. So it's worth checking out and worth consulting. So in the last part of the of my talk, I just wanted to put, so it was like more like cross-cutting issues and theory, and I want to put some actual examples in here, so we can look at the actual problems. But again, it would be done briefly, as it's more extensively, of course, presented in the report. But just for the sake of the discussion, so first of all, the main, I think, output we were working with are digital scholarly editions, which is a really good example, which kind of brings together all the issues we discussed earlier. Because, you know, it also brings the issues of different roles, because it's all about researching, editing, but also preparing the data. And then the outputs are diverse. So here you can see the Humboldt edition. So the output could be the actual edition, but also footnotes, the apparatus of the edition, but also the scans, the facsimile, etc. So it's all kind of packed into one output, which is really internally diverse. And there, as for scholarly editions, actually, the situation is pretty good in terms of evaluations, because there exists some really interesting criteria to which we link in the report. But I think this is one of the main outputs actually showing us how challenging those different issues are. Another one are so-called extended publications, which of course kind of could overlap. Of course, the scholarly edition could be treated as an extended publication, but this idea of those publications which contain more than just a text or, you know, image, so data, etc., enabling different reading modes and allowing for new structuring of the argument. So you can not only present your argument through text, but also you can use this visualization, you can use data, you can use other means of conveying your main point in text. Thirdly, databases and data sets. And of course, as database, we kind of understand more in some, you know, like projects like, you know, which host some database you can query, and data set as a kind of singular piece of data you can download, for instance, from somewhere. So here as well, there's this big talk about reusing the research data and how to kind of make them available for to facilitate reuse. So basically, there are lots of issues for proper description, using proper standards, providing access to datasets, but also providing this documentation. And we have, I mean, we may, in the humanities as such, we may not value so much databases and datasets as outputs, but data papers are the kind of stopgaps to kind of provide this whatever journal component to the database. I mean, they're very useful actually, because they contain basically short articles. Data paper is a short article about the data set, basically, which gives you the context, it gives you all the methodology of its creation, and of course the link to the data set. And this is really useful. So this is like a kind of step towards a really good in a good direction. But again, it would be great to have this database and datasets recognized as such without the need actually to publish them as a paper. Infographics, maps, and visualization, and again, similar issues. I mean, we sometimes use them just a picture, as I used, for instance, the Pac-Man picture in the beginning, just, you know, because it looks nice and it's fun, and I use it as a part of my argument. But of course, if it was a part of a paper, for instance, you're reading, or it would be good to actually provide a clear description of what's their data source for it. So we can actually not only see the nice visualization, which could be compelling, but also you can, for instance, take this data to a different visualization and check, whether, for instance, you see something else there. So this all those issues that kind of need to be in place to facilitate reuse and engaging with this data. Finally, next to the last is the code. So basically, the scholarly software. And here is the example is the stilo. So for people engaging with literary, let's say computational literary studies, it's a tool widely used for stylometric analysis. And actually, the PI of the project is actually the main author of the tool. However, as you can see, if you use Stylo, you cite the paper about Stylo, which is like again gives them the credit, but it's like if you think about it, it's like super weird. It's not like you're just citing the software or the version of the software. It will be probably the proper way to do it, but rather the paper that describes it. And again, there are like lots of issues around it, of course, fundamental for the age that, code creation or co-creation, because you can be a digital humanist working with IT developers and provide some input to the creation of the work, and still you should be somehow credited for this. So we also stress the need to integrate tool development into curricula, or proper citation already mentioned. And finally, last, this kind of lightweight public-facing scholarly activity of blogging and podcasting, which again is treated as a kind of, like again, as before, scholars would, write, newspaper columns or like short essays in popular magazines. It would be also this kind of, popular public-facing activity. But in this case, I think we see already that both blogs and podcasts kind of professionalize, and they become a really interesting and important source of knowledge. And writing a blog post or producing a podcast is a bit of the work. So it would be nice actually to have some recognition for that. But also we need to remember again about the good standards and practices. That we need to archive somehow this work, because if I were to quote a blog, I need to be sure that it's somehow it will be there when I'm kind of quoting it, so it's not disappearing. Proper metadata, citations, DOI, etc. Lots of those issues that should be kind of taken into consideration with doing that. But then still, it is a scholarly activity to be to consider. So finally, the report is live. So if you go to the our working group website, or just Google title, probably you'll find it. It's also is on Zenodo, and it gives you more, let's say, in-depth description of what I was just discussing here, with all the links to relevant literature and case studies. We also present some case studies with descriptions why we think they are important and interesting. So yeah, I'll be also, so thank you for having me, and I'll be really interested in also your perspective on that, and your problems and your difficulties with looking at this stuff. So thank you very much.